transfer underway. You either love it or you hate it, but I don't think you can deny the drama that it brings and the excitement it brings to fans of the clubs that you may support when you see your team linked to a player, maybe your favourite player in some cases as well. We're going to get into all that. It says league domination or league dominance on the thumbnail. So we want to dive into a little bit. Obviously, Chelsea dominated WSL, Barca, it's in Lyon in France. We want to talk about a bit how these transfers could potentially affect all of that. So we'll see you guys in just a second. Yes, hello and welcome back to All For Women's Football. It's been a while for me. It's been nearly a month since I have graced this side of the brand. And apparently this is where the cool kids hang out. But according to one person on the panel, not all of us fall into that category. Sorry, me, I had to bring that one before we came on. I was going to say, Sean, I had to reference it. I did say as soon as we're coming on, I'm talking about this as soon as we get on here. So there we go. For those of you who haven't seen, just go and check the Twitters. It's exactly as I said there. Is everyone doing all right? It's been a while. I've not seen you guys for a while on this side of the channel. Is anyone want to? Laura, you've been out for your runs today, I believe. Was it today you did it, or did you just upload it today?
I did one this morning, and I did one yesterday, and my legs now feel like jelly. But yeah, check out my TikTok if you want to see my runs in the shape of footballers.
I have to say, it is very, very good. She's Laura's running it in the kind of the shape, the lettering of Arsenal players at the moment. It's really, really good. I don't quite know how you're managing to do it. To be fair play to you for keeping that off on that one. Mia, you doing good down there in the corner?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Thank you for referencing that earlier. Thought we was gonna just move past that. Didn't want to highlight that anymore. But yeah, all good. It's nice to see you. It has been a very long time since I've seen your face and you've seen mine.
Yeah, it has been. It's literally been almost a month, so it's been a long, long time. Speaking of a long time, it feels a while ago since you were on the channel as well. You debuted about probably over a month ago now. So yeah, how are you doing on this fine Monday evening?
Famously, it's 6 weeks, as I worked out the other day. Because it was the end of May. I'm all right. I've just moved, so life's a bit chaotic and all a mess, but I'm all right.
There we go. Good to hear. I can't. I started laughing after doing it because I noticed this. What is this? Miriam, you've unlocked a memory here from the. Was it the World Cup? It must have been because United were just about to sign Jace. When Mia Eriksson, and Alina did a show, and this was the thing that everyone ran with. So you've just unlocked a memory for me there. I remember where this originally came from. Fair play to you. Right, we'll dive. Where should we start? Let's start with the WSL. And start with a player who's on the thumbnail, obviously with Miedema, because I feel like this was always going to happen. We always thought it was going to be City. We spoke about this on the channel about a month or so ago when it got announced she was leaving Arsenal. Laura, I want to come to you first and tie it into the league question in terms of, obviously, your thoughts on her move to City, but also the fact that is this going to be enough, do you think, to finally, for City to get that jump on Chelsea? Obviously, they ran them close last season. Is that kind of a signing going to be enough, potentially, to leapfrog Chelsea?
I personally think it could be because of Chelsea's managerial situation in particular, in the sense that it's very, very hard when you have good competition, and I think City now represent very good competition. They did this season, and they definitely will next season. When you have that strong competition, it is so hard going through a managerial transition to maintain those levels. Like, regardless of how good that manager is coming in, regardless of how good that team is, you're always going to go through different shifts, different wobbles. You're getting used to new people. And maybe they'll surprise us all and carry on at the same pace. But I do think there is a tendency that that's not going to carry on in the same way that we've seen. Like, one of Chelsea's main strengths has been that Emma Hayes has been so consistent, and they've had that consistency throughout that period. So this is going to be a really interesting challenge for Chelsea. So more than anything, I think we'll definitely see them wobble a bit more than we have seen them. And I think they did wobble a little bit last season anyway. And then in terms of the Vivianne and Miedema signing, I think that's just insane when you look at that attack now. And I'm sure we might see maybe an outgoing, but wow, like, I think if we're talking about like where do they need to add, maybe a little bit more depth, kind of deeper in that midfield for City. But even then, you're just like nitpicking over what is an absolutely incredible team. Like Miedema, Roord, Park, all kind of vying for like similar positions. You've got Shaw up front, vying with Miedema. Like the competition's insane. However they line up, it's going to be an incredible starting 11. And if they can keep kind of the key figures like Hasegawa fit throughout the season and Coombs that play further back, I think they could be pretty unstoppable in the WSL come next season.
It just screams goals. We might come to a potential outgoing at City with Chloe Kelly when we come to talk about France and obviously PSG as well, because that is the heavily rumoured. And I'm not getting into the United link with Chloe Kelly because I don't believe there's too much in that one. Appreciate that, Sean. It's I'm not feeling very well, so I appreciate that. That means a lot more than usual on tonight's show because I've literally just rolled over onto the chair to come and do this show. Off we go. Mia, I'll throw it over to you then in terms of this signing, and obviously I don't think it's necessarily a surprise as such. This comment saying, in terms of depends where she's going to be used and so on. What's your thoughts on that signing overall, and does that make them again title challenges for next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think people know how I feel about Chelsea winning the league consistently. So I feel like someone's just said it here. Alan. There. I think this is absolutely the case, and I'm not mad about it because I think it's about time someone else wins the league. But you have Viv, and when she's fit and on form, has a couple of games under her belt, playing off and onto Bunny Shaw is just rude. It's ridiculous. I'm not sure City needed her necessarily, but when she's on a free and City have the money they have, they was always going to take that opportunity. So I think it's going to be, really exciting. I think we're going to see a lot of goals for Manchester City next season.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sorry, I was making myself laugh with awful puns in the comments. It's not going to be in the project. That's not going to be repeated. Liberty, I'll throw it over to you then in terms of your thoughts on this signing. Trevor Shaw's saying they're going to try and find if Taylor plays Viv at the 10. George is talking about talking about City 100%. Squad to win it, goals for fun with their attacking options. Where do you see Viv fitting in? Because we kind of seen her in the 10. Obviously, we know she's got an exceptional striker as well. Obviously, that is Buddy Shaw's position as well. How can you see them all kind of gelling together in this team?
Change in formation. He needs to play. The thing is, you can't have both Shaw and Miedema on the same squad and not play them both, and not necessarily in a sense of just to keep them happy, but I think that's really scary if you can have a formation where you play both Miedema and Shaw at the same time. And I don't mean playing Viv as a 10. That's not what I mean, because I don't want that. I'm meaning playing them both as strikers and changing a formation that way. That is where I think it will work best, because I don't think she'll be playing as a 10. And I fear that if he does, once Roord comes back and she's already vying for the 10 with Park, that he'll then push Roord further back, which is where she played at Wolfsburg and where it really didn't work. When she was at Wolfsburg, she was playing as more of an 8 next to Oberdorf, and it just kind of swallowed her whole, and she was kind of invisible. And I think that, he needs to play them as 2 strikers with Roord as the 10 instead, just to get the best out of everyone and not have Miedema as a 10 at all.
I really agree with that, and I think people, if you want, you can bookmark this. Come back to this at the start of the season. I think City will go to something like a 3 at the back, or like a 3/5, whichever way you want to look at it. And it'll be Shaw and Miedema actually 2 strikers. If obviously Hemp is sticking around, like convert into some kind of wing back on that side potential, I can see them going that route to try and get them both in. If that is the case, ultimately, if it's going to win them games, that's a good way forward as well. I don't know about that, Anton. That's a shout. Maybe in a few years, maybe. I don't know. That's a big shout at the moment. don't think that's necessarily one for now, though. That's one maybe for the unpopular opinion show that we had like 2.5 weeks ago, I think. Maybe, but each to their own. You know, it's your opinion. You can roll with that one. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, you can't argue with the numbers that people are putting up on that one. And yeah, she is a generational striker. You can't afford to play her opposition. No, I agree. And I'm very obviously envious of the fact that City are going to be able to potentially utilise her in that team. It's fair play to them. You know, and a free transfer as well. It's absolutely mental to me. I know this is still the norm in women's football, and you know, we're seeing a lot of big names go on a free, but that just seems criminal for a player of that quality to be going on a free. And I know she's explained it, by the way. I take real issue to her being number 6. I cannot lie. I know she's given her reasons. It's an upside down 9. I get all of that, but strikers are not number 6s. And I'll stand by that. I'm really het up. It's like, does anyone remember? I don't know if any of you watch men's football. This is really off topic. When Chao Cancelo, the right back, put the number 7 shirt on the back of his, like, it's like, you know, fullbacks are not number 7s.
William Gallas at number 10.
Exactly. Like
Jeff Catley's famously been the 7 her whole career or something like that. It's a very long time, going back to A-League days.
No, I can't be. No, it's not for me. I'm really het up on like your fullbacks are like 2 and 3. Your centre backs 4 and 5. Number 6, your 8, your 10, your 9 is your strike. But yes, maybe that's one for another day. Oh, hang on. There's so many examples now coming into the chat. Different shirt numbers. Yeah, Trevor, exactly. You're with me. But there we go. There's a question here. I don't know who wants to pick this one up. Is Caldente a big enough replacement for Miedema, or do you think Arsenal are out of the Tartarus for a good while? Ooh. I'll open up to anyone who wants to answer that, because I don't have an answer currently.
I don't think it's enough. I think Caldente is a great, is good recruitment. She knows how to win things, which is important for Arsenal if they're going to challenge for the title. But I don't think she's not in a replica Miedema, and I think Arsenal's problems come tactically, to be honest, and I think that's where they struggled most this season in the sense that they weren't converting crosses, and whatever they were doing in terms of that crossing and the kind of inability to kind of break down a low block. So I don't think Caldente has got the key to single-handedly break down a low block. So I don't think it's enough at the moment. But I think what can happen at Arsenal is that they sort those problems out and they tactically work around that if they are to challenge. But hopefully there maybe is another addition to kind of work on that side of things. But I do think Caldente is a good signing. I think it's strange that she's potentially older, but it will be interesting. And yeah, it remains to be seen where she'll be played. It kind of feels that at the moment she slots most naturally into the 10 because Arsenal do have an abundance of wingers, but it will be interesting to see how the transfer window develops in terms of that.
Liberty's shaking already. I don't know whether you're disagreeing with Laura or disagreeing with the premise of the question.
She will not be playing as a 10. I would. She's going to be playing on the wing, and the first part of the question was, is she a big enough replacement? I think people think she's a replacement. I don't think that's what the recruitment was for her to replace Miedema. That's not, because I don't think that's the purpose of her. She can play as a 9. She can play as a 10. She can also play on the wing. That is fair enough. And that way of looking at it, it makes sense to think like that. But I actually think it's more of a not patching the holes, but patching the leaks instead, because I actually disagree with Laura. Barcelona, I can't remember who said it. This is not my thinking. Somebody else said this. Barcelona mainly face low blocks, which is a ridiculous thing to think about when you think about the scorelines they come up with. But 9 times out of 10 in the Liga, they come against low blocks that they want to frustrate them and make it really hard for them. She has become adept to week in, week out, forcing her way along amongst low blocks and learning how to either make something for herself or feed those around her through a low block. And Arsenal, I think, are going to increasingly come against low blocks because everyone's seen that this season just gone that they really struggled, and they think, well, that's the way to frustrate them. And especially, I mean, like people at West Ham, people on the kind of lower side are going to try and do that, and that she has that low block experience that nobody else in the Arsenal squad is going to have. And I think that's where she has become such a incredible winger. She'll be playing on the wing. I would put money on it. But I think that's why she's been signed more so than, oh, she's replacing Miedema. Because she has the same qualities, but she also has completely different qualities too.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair way to look at it, to be fair. I'm intrigued. I think there's a couple of players in the Arsenal squad. Russo is one of them I look at, and I still don't know where her actual best position is. And I say this from watching her at United for years as well. I still couldn't tell you where her best position is. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jonas does fit all of these kind of players into the front line. I think it's an intriguing one. There's a few names I'm going to throw out over the next kind of hour or so. I'm intrigued to see what goes on and kind of where they kind of fit in. I want to throw it over to Chelsea. We briefly mentioned them. I will come to some of your comments in just a second. I'm going to go through Star and some in a second. But Mia, I'll throw it over to you. Lucy Bronze is the next name I wanted to throw out there because it's, well, as far as I'm aware, this is pretty much a done deal now to Chelsea. What do you make of this one? Because I think Tom Gary initially broke it that there was interest from Chelsea, and no one believed it. Everyone was like, yeah, whatever. It's just an interest. Then obviously Emily reported it and Tom followed it up that this is essentially going to happen. What's your thoughts on it now? Because I think I put this on TikTok and I got a lot of backlash for saying I don't understand this. So I'm intrigued to see if you support my claims that it's a bit strange, but also whether you think it's a good or bad one.
This is insane. This is absolutely insane. And we actually spoke about this earlier on in the year to say, like, we knew her contract was coming to an end and we were saying where could we see her? I think most of us said in America. There was a couple of shouts to just be romantic and go and play for Sunderland, finish your career in Sunderland. But she's not. She's gone, and listen, if Chelsea are knocking on the door, you're probably going to take it. And I do think it's probably a hefty pay packet for her. And it's probably the last big one she'll have. I personally, I think she's getting older, right? She's not the same Lucy Bronze that she was before. And she does have some good games, but she's not as consistent as she has been. And that, that comes with getting older. But I don't think Chelsea need her. I think there's no point her being there. I think it's just nothing for me. I think she would be better elsewhere. But yeah, exactly. It just makes no sense to me. But yeah, I mean, she's not going to say no. She just isn't going to say no. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
It's certainly a strange. I mean, James has mentioned offering a big wage. That's how I understand it. It is very much I think Chelsea just put more money down, and that was a enticing offer. And also, it's not like she's going to a team that's not challenging for the league every year and going to get far at the Champions League. This is a team that will very, very likely get to the semi-finals again of the Champions League and be fighting for all 3 domestic cups anyway. So it's not like from a trophy point of view that's not going to be disappointing for her. I don't know whether Laura Liberty, you've got anything to add on this. So, I mean, as Connor's saying here, Lucy wants to win the Champions League with 3 different clubs. I mean, she's a winner, right? She's won everywhere she's beaten. She knows how to do it. What do you guys think on it? I mean, Sean's mentioned it there in terms of, you got Lawrence, Perisset, obviously Charles on the other side. Like, there's good options Chelsea have in the fullback position. So is that a bit of a surprise? I don't know which one of you wants to go first on this one. That potentially she's going there in a, I think someone mentioned, was Sean again talking about game time. Is she going to get all that much game time at Chelsea as well? Do we reckon? There's a lot of shaking heads going on.
The thing that Sonia Bonpastor at Lyon rotated quite a bit, but it was only in specific places. So there were quite a few times throughout the season where Salma Basha and Alice Sombath would, so fullbacks, if this is where we're going with this, would rotate between games, as in, you know, Salma Basha would start one weekend and then Alice Sombath would start the other. So maybe there is a thing of she's seen that she does rotate, so she's not necessarily going to be the number one, but she has seen that she doesn't necessarily have one player in one position and stick to it, which may have been something that came, like, was her thinking, but I don't think she's starting, like, just WSL, for example, over anyone else, especially big games. I wouldn't be putting Bronze over Lawrence against Arsenal, because Bronze clearly has weaknesses now, and even though she has incredible games, I mean, the Champions League final against Lyon was probably her best game of the season. Even though she has these incredible games, they do have then their moments of complete downfall. She famously the year before gave away that first Eva Payor goal in the Champions League final, and it's kind of things like that. The World Cup final also was half the reason that the goal goes in. So I think she's not necessarily going to be, you know, even if it's a thing of she gets 60 minutes and then she gets pulled, maybe that's kind of her thinking, because that's something more than nothing. Because at Barcelona last season, especially when Fridolina Rolfo came back, she was not being subbed on. She was not the player being subbed on or being subbed off. It was more Fridolina Rolfo and Onabaja were going, kind of thing. So maybe that's what she's thinking. But I don't understand it. I think I left a comment on your original post, Connor, being like, I'm not sure this is the signing they think it is. This is not, Lucy Bronze of 3, 4, 5 years ago anymore.
No, I tend to agree, Laura, and Laura, throw it over to you as well, because there's obviously a lot of comments about it. George has talked about it being, obviously, her mentality, I don't think can be questioned. I think, trophies and medals, I think, stack up for itself. Trebuchet's put an option in, Lawrence and Charles on the left and Bronze and Perisset on the right, potentially. Can you see that kind of thing happening?
Yeah, potentially. I think what Liberty says kind of explains potentially where Bombastor is coming from. I don't think it necessarily explains Bronze's thinking. I think Lucy Bronze will be going to Chelsea to become a starter and to play as much as she can. I don't think she'll kind of be settling for any less minutes than that in terms of how we've seen, like, Lucy Bronze's mentality. And I do think she's a player that wants to win as much as she can. You saw the kind of reaction to her not making the Olympics, her reaction to losing the World Cup final. She's won everything there is to win except for that World Cup, and she's here to win more trophies. And I think that is so apparent of her as a character and as a player, that she will go where she can win trophies. And obviously Chelsea is absolutely that kind of place. So yeah, I think it will be really interesting to see actually how much game time she does get, because it does feel like she's a player that's potentially, from the outside, like, obviously I don't think she'll believe that she's coming to the end of her career. She's not stepped down from international football. She's not made any of those kind of choices that are looking like she's heading towards the end of her career. But we all kind of see the performances aren't where we know Lucy Bronze has been in the past. So it will be really interesting to see where Bompastor sees her, like, as a benefit for the team. And I think the kind of rotating option is a really interesting kind of theory on that. And also what we've heard from, like, the chat, I guess, in terms of it's something to have a player with that level of competitiveness around your squad that's going to drive everyone on in training, because I'm more than certain that she trains like an absolute beast every time. And if you've got players that do that around the training camp, then it's going to drive everyone on. So I think there is a value to having players like that just in your squad. That being said, if you're blowing that amount of wages, it's potentially not quite worth that.
It's going to be interesting with Chelsea. Obviously, Baltimore as well as another player, and Bartel, a player that, I mean, Chelsea have, as far as I'm aware, have got an issue now where, I mean, well, it's not an issue, they'll find a way around it, but obviously you can only have a certain number of players registered for a season anyway. They're well over that limit with the amount of players. You go on the Chelsea's, like, website and look at their squad. They've got about 50 players. It's ridiculous. So obviously, not all of those are going to be registered. You've got the youngsters that won't be registered, and you've got other players that will likely leave as well. I think there'll be a couple of options. I wouldn't be surprised potentially to see Paris move on. I'd keep an eye on her. I think that's potentially one that we might see. But you've got players that I can potentially see moving on and loaned and all that kind of thing anyway. Chelsea don't need anybody. Let's be real. Like the team they've got currently, they could probably maybe do with one midfield. And to be fair, aren't they going to get one in anyway? I think they've got that position sorted. So I don't think they need. Chelsea probably want to add a little bit more depth. I don't think it's necessarily a position that they need as such. Speaking of France, I want to throw it over to the French league very quickly because we kind of said before we went live when we were looking at this and league dominance and why Lyon is on the center of this thumbnail. Because when we talk about league dominance, if it wasn't for PSG a couple of years ago winning the title, Lyon will be on something about 16, 17 in a row right now in terms of division titles because they have absolutely dominated the French league. Laura, we'll come to you first actually on this one. Talk a little bit about some of the moves that PSG have made so far. Obviously, they're looking at obviously they've already signed Mary Earps and Mbok as well. They're looking at potentially, the link to Kelly, Rasso. I think Cascarino as well. They're linked to a few players that would definitely, I think, improve the squad. But the big one for me is Chawinga. Had her on loan, and she's gone to the title rival and will very much likely make them better as well. Can you see them kind of overtaking Lyon next season and pushing on with the signings they've made so far and the players they're linked to? How do you kind of see those so far?
Yeah, it seems. I mean, that transfer, if that's symbolic of anything, it does seem very tough for them to kind of do anything next season. That being said, they did really well this season in terms of you looking at their Champions League run and how close they took Lyon in the semi-final. Albeit kind of mentality of going from 2-0 up to 3-2 down is pretty shocking. And I guess that's the kind of mentality of letting your best loan player go. But more than anything, that transfer just seems to send a signal of, this player who's incredible and will obviously bolster any team is going to choose your biggest rivals over a team that she's just spent a year with, has done well with, and is kind of settled with, which, consistency is good for any player's career. So why is she making that switch? And it's either she didn't like the environments at PSG or she sees that Lyon is a place to win trophies. And that's sending a message out to everyone else that's kind of like, well, here we're going to Lyon to win trophies and PSG is just kind of the second team in France. So I do think it's such a bizarre kind of event for PSG to let that happen. But I guess there's only so much they can do to persuade a player, and if that's where she wanted to go. I think it'd be interesting. Obviously, Lyon are dealing with a managerial change as well, but both of them are. So we'll see how that kind of plays out because it's hard to predict exactly how. I mean, we can obviously it's not too hard to predict, but you're looking at two different managers who are going to potentially use those players in different ways. Montemurro obviously going to Lyon, who hasn't had the best time with Juventus. And you saw, Mia can talk more on this, but you saw Juventus go from a real force in Italy to Roma now winning. And will that be the same in France, So there's a lot of unknowns in there, but it does seem kind of the way things are going that it will be very hard to topple Lyon.
The eyebrow raise from me and Livia when you said that.
I hadn't thought about that.
Oh, that's food. Someone can clip that. Come back to that in a year's time. We'll come back to it at the end of May. See if that is the case. Liberty, I will throw it over to you because you mentioned a player in our private chat, and Sean just mentioned it. Obviously, we see this a lot. It seems to be a switch between Lyon and PSG. And this isn't uncommon. We see it in Germany as well between Wolfsburg and Bayern and so on. Mentioned a few of them there, Chawinga, Diani, and Endler, and so on. Are you surprised Chawinga's chosen Lyon potentially, and the other moves that PSG have made? Do you think that is enough to bridge the gap and overtake?
Firstly, I want to say Diani didn't necessarily. There was the thing of Lyon win, so she went to Lyon, but there was also kind of more background stuff that was happening at PSG that she couldn't continue on at. So I think that is something to point out firstly purely for Diani has been brought up, and that is the player I mentioned. I think PSG's issue, and it's also an issue I think Real Madrid have, is that they are their own worst enemy. As in, as Laura said, PSG have proven incredibly recently that they can push Lyon. I mean, the Champions League, they pushed them and then were their own fault down to then go from 2 up to losing 3-2. But also in the final, because they changed the system, so now they play playoffs. In the playoffs final, they pushed them a lot, but as in pushed Lyon to a point where they would look like they were struggling, but they can't ever then do anything when they put them in that position. When they have Lyon kind of against the ropes, then they're kind of don't have that final thing. I think if they are going to push Lyon, they need to find that final thing. And it's the same, I think, with Real Madrid. They can push Barcelona, but then they can also crumble quite significantly. I mean, the season before last, it took one penalty in one of the cups. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but there was a Fridley and a Roquefort was the only difference at the end of the game between Real Madrid and Barcelona. And all it was a penalty. They could not get past Real Madrid for the life of them. But then you have a season later, they lose 6-0 in one game, 3-0 in another. It's a kind of thing of like many of these kind of big clubs that are seen as slightly inferior to the kind of dominant side in the league never have that final edge. And I think that is something that they're going to struggle against until they can break that down. I don't think it's a thing of have they got the talent, have they got the tactics. I think it's more become a mental thing for them. And once they kind of break that, then there's a proper title race on their hands, because you can get as close as you want, but if you never break that thing, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just kind of stagnant.
No, I think that's a fair way of looking at it. And it's definitely a mental that we've seen it in the WSL, particularly with United and Chelsea over kind of the years that United have been in the WSL. That just every single season, it was always a Chelsea win, no matter how close United got. And eventually, obviously, United finally did get over the line. See how that plays out in the next kind of couple of years. Mira, I want to throw this over to you from a PSG point of view as well, because obviously big names that we have seen obviously going over there, Mary Earps being one of them. Again, I don't think that was a massive surprise. I think that was a name that I think we were all expecting. Chloe Kelly is another player that is heavily linked with PSG as well. Do you see that as an attractive proposition? I guess on Earps as well, just while we're talking about her, are you surprised that that's the club? To be honest, I don't think she had much option. Is that kind of where you expected her to end up in the end?
Earps, yes, that is exactly where I thought she would end up. I couldn't really see her sticking about in England. There was no place for her really. So yeah, I think she's going to go out there and try and, she's a big name in women's football, and to go out to Paris and hopefully put a good stamp on the club, and all the best. Whatever happened at United. But yeah, it's a good move for her. I think she said she wanted to play Champions League football regularly, and she's gonna do that. So that's that. And I think it's the same for Chloe Kelly as well, who had an interview at Silverstone the other day and nearly let it slip out. I don't know if anyone's seen that. She nearly said that she was excited to go and play with Mary Earps in Paris. Just paraphrasing. You can watch that video back and make your own decisions. But I don't watch a lot of the French league, so I personally can't see the attraction in it. But PSG is a massive club across the board, and if that's where they want to play, that's where they want to play. If I'm Chloe Kelly, I'm staying at Manchester City purely for the fact that I've been part of the WSL for a long period of time. I think this is the season that City win the WSL, and I think if she does go and then misses out on that, I mean, yeah, she's quality enough to go and win it at PSG as well. But I would stay at City if I was her.
It's a fair, but Trebuchet does make a fair point as well. This was one of the holdups, I believe, in the Mary Earps thing as well. Is obviously I think they've maxed out their number of non-EU players. So if they are wanting to get Kelly in, I think they have to move someone else out in order to make that happen. I really don't know with Kelly. I agree with you, Mia. I think I definitely messaged a few people as soon as I watched that. I was like, she so nearly said she's excited to play, but then stopped just as she was about to say something like that. So could I see her there? Absolutely. I think she probably suits PSG. I think it's a good move for her if that does happen. Yeah, there's a lot of people with you as well. Joe's with you. It's a number, isn't it? Is it 8? It's either 7 or 8, I think. Don't someone double check that. I think it's 7 or 8. It's definitely a single digit that's close to 10. So it's between 7 and 9.
I don't know what it is, but I know it's the reason why Lucy Bronze was registered at Barcelona under her Portuguese passport, so that she could be classified as an EU player instead. And then they could bring in Kira as a non-EU, because then they kind of maxed out their options.
Oh, here we go. We got one. George is backing me up. 8. I think it is that. I swear I've been told that recently. But anyway, we'll move on. Someone could fact check that, but it's between 7 and 9. So there's your parameters. What are you shaking your head out for me? That's only 3 numbers. It's one of those. Speaking of me, I'm actually going to throw it over to Italy then, because I want to talk about Juve a little bit, because we spoke about, obviously, with the manager, we spoke about it there. I'm going to quickly bring this graphic on screen from Soccer. I those of you everyone probably knows who they are if you follow women's football, made this graphic as they do. Let's all lean to one side so we can actually see who we are. With the signings that everyone does that, they go the wrong way. With the signings that they've made already. Obviously with Lehman, Vansgaard, across the front, Benison, obviously from WSL fans will know as well. Mia, what are you making of Juventus so far? Because I know there's a lot of controversy around the Lehman signing. Vansgaard, I think, is a very good pickup, by the way. There's a couple of other players in there as well. What are you making of this? Because I think a lot of Juve will be hoping they can get back ahead of Roma. Is that enough, do you think, in the signs they've made so far?
Not at all. Not in the slightest. I've said this before. I think with Juve, they have lost their identity completely. They are just wandering through the leagues. Obviously, the last 2 seasons, the title has gone to Roma. It's not been a nice, juicy, end of the season, who's going to win it. In 2022-23, Roma won the league by 13 points, and then last season they won it by 11 points. So they're winning the league before the second phase of the season, when it splits off into the 2 pools. So Juve have to somehow get back on the horse. Prior to this, they'd won 5 Scudettos in a row. That's, it was a record at the time. So to fall off that bad is crazy to me. But the flip side of that is Roma are a club who are investing, who do care about the women's team, and we don't have problems like we do have with the Lehman situation, where if you do look through Juve's Instagram, if you follow any of the Juve players, not many of them have sort of interacted with those posts, but they have with Benison, they have with Bergamassi, they have with all the other players at Vangsgaard. It doesn't feel great. And I think especially it is sour. This recent deal with Lehman is a really sour one. And the players know that. The boss knows that. How they're going to use her is another thing I'm really interested in seeing, because I actually had to count up the amount of players that they have in Lehman's position in total. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 players in her position that they can use and play. And that's not including the youth that's up and coming. So it's all just a bit of a mess. I don't see them. I put out a tweet actually yesterday, and it caused a bit of drama, because AC Milan are after Suzanne Bacco, used to coach for Ajax. And I think that's a really big move for Milan, who were in the sort of lower end of the table this season. And I said, if she recruits well, they could be above Juve next season. And people didn't like that because I don't think Juve have a clue about where they want to go or what they're doing. The new coach at Juve is Max Kanzi. He has no credentials in women's football whatsoever. That was always going to be the case for Juve's next boss. They wanted to recruit someone like Andrea Sonchin, who is the Italy women's manager, who sort of come out of nowhere, did a bit of academy work, and has just done really, really well. Whether this is going to happen with Kanzi, I have no idea. I've seen a halftime talk of his, and I'm not massively keen on how he operates. So again, it's going to be a really interesting season for Juve. It's one that they really should be pushing on for, but they have lost a big star in Echegini, who is going to PSG. I think the big thing for Juve last season was their defence. They've got really, really leaky defence, but they've signed 3 attacking players and they've not even signed a defender. They've just kept her from a loan. So there's a lot of work that they need to do. And this is why the Lehmann deal stings even more. And people are like, oh, but she's a good player. She is a good player. And, you can't take that away from her. But she wasn't needed. She wasn't wanted. It was sprung upon them. And there's a couple of quality players from last season that now have to move on because they can't afford to keep them on, which is pretty gut-wrenching for them. But yeah, I could talk for hours about it. So I'm not sure I've answered your question, Connor, because I can't really remember what it was. But Roma will win the Scudetto next season, and again, comfortably, until Juve can figure out what their priorities are.
No, yeah, I definitely wanted to come to you first. Now, there's a couple of questions directly for you. I want to come back to Joe. I see a question directly from me. I'll come back to that in just a second. Sean's mentioned Koivis that this was such a good signing. I can't believe she's gone there, to be honest. But fair play to her. Clearly been promised something over there. I think that's Kieran agreeing with you. With a thumbs up. So, Rasso's been mentioned a couple of times because she is heavily linked to Italy as well. That's potential to. For you, agree. Vansgaard's been kind of shoved all over the place in various different positions. She's very versatile, but the problem with versatile players is they kind of get just put anywhere. Sometimes where they don't necessarily want to play. So that'll be an interesting one. Sean, I think, was taking the mick. I think you definitely covered that. Freya came straight in there where she's not starting. Which, to be fair, looking at that front line, I don't think she is either. Laura and Liberty, have you got anything to add on the Juventus chat and anything around that? Because it's been hot. I think it's fair to say now, if there's any Italians watching this, no disrespect, I think the Italian league is probably the least covered, particularly over here in England. I think the Fran Bundesliga and Barca, particularly over in Spain, and the French league, and obviously the WSL is definitely more reported than Italy is, I find. Whether that's just because of the people I follow, I don't know, but it definitely seems that way. But this Lehmann story definitely has cast a spotlight on Juventus in recent weeks. Liberty, you're nodding along. Have you got any thoughts on this one in terms of what's going on here?
I first have a comment to what you just said about people in the UK reporting on international leagues. I think it depends if there are lionesses in those leagues. That is something I've thought for a while. But I do think it helps, and I think it helps when there's... Well, it doesn't help when there's not, because interest stems from the lionesses in this country quite a bit. And it's something that's frustrated me as a lover of many an international league, that is where the focus happens to be. But, I mean, I agree with Mia. I thought it was ludicrous, ridiculous. I don't have particularly extensive knowledge, I will say. That is, I've admitted this to Mia before. It's not a league that I am well versed in. I could talk your ear off for an hour or two about the Damallsvenskan, but I couldn't talk for 5 minutes about Italy. But it was something that felt just ridiculous, and I think I either said it to someone or tweeted it, that it felt more of a getting punters in the door more than signing for quality and what is needed. I don't like it, and I doubt it's going to last long. She's quite young. She's over 25, but she's not pushing 30. I can't remember off the top of my head, but she's in that kind of range, and I think it is just ridiculous. And maybe a season and a half, and she'll be leaving. Unfortunately, I think you can quote me on that. I don't mind.
No, I think you are right about the Lioness players thing as well, because I think the Fran Bundesliga in particular, obviously as soon as Stanway went there, a lot more eyes, I think, went over there as well. And obviously Pernilla Hard from Magda Eriksson, obviously, I think has helped as well. I mean, Laura, have you got any kind of thoughts on this? There's a lot of comments in particular about, I knew as soon as I asked that question, Lehman was going to be the focus point of of the question. But have you got anything to add on that particular conversation or kind of the Italian transfer so far that we've seen overall?
Not in particular. Again, my knowledge of the Italian leagues is not as good as it should be. One thing I can add is I was at a conference at the start of this season, and there was a representative from AC Milan there. I think she was she worked in like stats and like an analysis department at AC Milan, and she was kind of on a panel discussing the kind of growth of women's football. And what she said would sound like, obviously she's going to give a good representation of AC Milan, so it's to be taken with a pinch of salt. But the way she spoke about the progress at the club at the time and how she felt she was supported sounded really promising. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that AC Milan are looking so good ahead of next season in terms of what she was saying. In the start of this season, it sounded like they were making a lot of investments in their backroom staff and giving the funding there and kind of growing it in that right way in terms of the analysis departments. And their long-term aim was certainly, from her point of view, to challenge. So I think there'll be a really interesting story to follow if what she said is kind of true and to be believed. But it certainly sounded promising, and obviously that can change and fluctuate. But yeah, that just sounded really promising. So I thought I'd add that little bit in. But yeah, in terms of analysis, I probably can't add more than what's already been added.
I'm just going to comment here because I wrote this down because I saw some statistics following Lehman's announcement, because the last time I spoke about this, it was pre-announcement. We knew it had happened, but she hadn't been announced. So just in case anyone was in any doubt that this is just a PR stunt, in 24 hours following her announcement, Juve gained nearly 30,000 more followers in 24 hours. The engagement went up from 6% to 26%, and her posts are the ones with the most interactions in the history of Juve's Instagram. I think she's racked up over those few posts 2 million likes. It's a PR stunt. The wrong people are going to come into the stadiums. This league is not going to grow in this way. Thank you, TJ. Okay, thank you. That's it. I won't talk about it ever again.
I do have one thing to add. At least now that she's gone to Italy, she can get use out of the Italian teacher that is Smilavlato.
Is it? I don't know what to say to that because I don't understand.
For reference, her best friend on the national team is Smilavlato, who plays for Hammarby, who has an Italian father. That's the joke.
That's way too intellectual for us on this channel. That's fair play. There you go. We all learned something today. For those
we are just idiots. We are just idiots. Like that is. Have you seen our content before? This is women's football for dummies. No offense, and that's just. Let's move on. Should we move on? Let's move on.
Well, you hearing this, Laura? Well, there we go. Mia got so offended with the cool kids comments by Liberty earlier. She's just attacking all of us now. There we go. Know what Mia thinks of the channel? We'll bring that up at the next meeting. Anyway, moving on. I mean, she's a very clever person. I think she's well aware. What you've done now. Oh dear. I was gonna say Polly, you'd fit right in, but then I realised as I was thinking that I was like, hang on a minute. No.
This is aimed for you. This is aimed at you, Polly. This is aimed. That comment was directed at you. So thanks for listening.
Oh dear. Oh, these shows always go. This is why I don't host on this channel much anymore. Struggle to keep a hold of the panel.
So look at that comment. Look what Sean's just put in that box.
I mean, to be fair, I disagree with it. I did disagree with it, but I'm not going to take any Zanham slander anymore.
Let's move on. Should we move on? What are we talking about next, Connor? Thank you. All done.
Shall we move on? Right, we mentioned the Fran Bundesliga very quickly now, and I do want to quickly talk about that league as well, because it does feel like, and Liberty, I'll come to you first maybe on this one then, because it feels like Bayern are on the up. They've announced today that Gwyn has extended her contract as well. They're getting a lot of players tied up. Strauss has not long extended as well. They've already brought in Oberdorf. They've kept pretty much every key player from last season as well. Whereas it does seem like Wolfsburg are on the other direction and they're losing a lot of their players. Well, Jansen's obviously already moved on. They're obviously manager, whatever you think of him, he is leaving at the end of next season as well. What do you think Wolfsburg need to do to get back ahead of Bayern? Obviously, they famously beat them in the cup every season. You know, that seems to be a given that they keep winning the cup. But the league, the Bayern obviously have won it in the last couple of seasons. What do you think they need to do to, keep hold of some of these players? But it does feel like they're in a little bit of a transition now with kind of the old guard going into a new one.
Yeah, definitely there is a change happening. Wolfsburg potentially are also their own worst enemies, as in there are many times where last season especially Oberdorf was the one that bailed them out. Oberdorf was the one that took it upon herself to be a defensive mid, become a centre-back, then go and score a goal. Like, there was points where she was the only one who looked like she cared. And I think losing her is going to sting more than I think we're going to realise, which is really stupid because we all kind of know Oberdorf as this absolutely sensational talent. But I think the actual aftermath of losing her, especially losing her to Bayern, where she's going to go straight into that midfield next to Georgia Stanway, and that is going to be a midfield three of Oberdorf, Stanway, and Georgia and Pernille Harder in front of them. That is the midfield. Maybe Lohman might come in, but that is pretty much a set three. And I think Wolfsburg will. Strauss leaving after this season, which I don't understand. I think if he was going to leave, he should leave now because there's no point extending the pain. I last time I was here, I was not particularly complimentary of him, but I think pushing him for another season is going to kill them more than they realise because he himself does not know what is best for that team. There was large chunks of last season where he was playing Eva Pyle, the best striker in the world, as a winger to accommodate Alex Poppen. Does my head in. But I think they are just trying to delay the obvious, which is going to be an even further downfall, especially because Frankfurt are on the up. If Frankfurt can get a striker, and I wanted it to be Viv Miedema, but that didn't happen. But if they can get a striker who plays well with Laura Freigang, they will push Wolfsburg out of the second spot. You can also quote me on that. But I think, the downfall's not finished yet, even though they've now gone 2 seasons coming second to Bayern. Yes, they won the cup, but it kind of feels the same as Arsenal winning the Conti Cup every season. It just kind of keeps happening, and nobody kind of knows how. But yeah, I think the downfall's not over, and unfortunately, keeping Strout on is going to keep pushing it down, and eventually they will not be in second position at all. Frankfurt will overtake them.
Interesting observations. I mean, this comment's talking about Wolfsburg being a bit like Atletico. Once Bayern stabilise the project, they'll be all over. That's a shout. I feel like, and you mentioned the manager. I want to come to you, Laura, in just a second on this. But as Joe did ask, and I feel like I'm in a good place to answer this, being the rep that I am on this panel. But did you see reports to obviously the street is linked to replace Mark Skinner next season? Yes. So. This is a strange one, right? And the exact quote was in advanced talks, which would usually mean that this is quite close to getting agreed in some kind of pre-contract agreement for the end of next season. If that is the case, it's a strange one because I take on board what Liberty's saying, and there's a lot of criticism of him. However, I speak to a lot of people in Germany, and they all speak ridiculously highly of him. So I'm somewhere in the middle on this because I don't quite know what to make in terms of a manager and a potential new manager for Manchester United. So it's a bizarre one. I think there's a lot going on at Wolfsburg, and I think he's taken a bit of the flack for that. I'm not saying he's not a problem. He may well be. But I do think there's other things going on at Wolfsburg that is not helping behind the scenes as well. So I'm not too sure. I mean, people have got their own opinions on Mark Skinner. That's a whole other conversation that we don't need to get into on here because I think that could take up another hour of the show. I think it's interesting. I think it's intriguing, I think is the point I would make, because when in the WSL, Man United haven't even started pre-season yet, let alone the season, and they're already talking about the manager that they've just extended like a month ago. It seems a bit odd. I'm all for pre-planning and being proactive. This seems a bit early for that. We've not even kick-started pre-season yet, and we're already talking about replacing the guy. Seems a bit bizarre to me. But you've got to move fast in this game. Laura, I want to throw it over to you then, from a Wolfsburg point of view, potentially, in terms of anything that you see there in terms of what they need to overtake. Obviously, when you're looking at the players that they've still got, I always look at Wolfsburg and think that the reason why I say it's a transition period is because you look at a lot of the ages of their players that, late 20s, early 30s, a lot of, especially the back line, they've got a lot of aging players, I feel like, that potentially need moving on and looking to the next generation now. What have you made of that? And I know we've spoken about it already, but losing, obviously, Oberdorf, a big player to direct rivals as well in Bayern Munich, has only made Bayern stronger and Wolfsburg weaker.
Yeah, that one itself seems like a crazy loss. Again, the Germany's probably not my strength either in terms of analysis, but that, like, symbolically, that signing is another huge one, even worse than Chawinga, and also the way that it was announced, right? Like, before the season had ended, your best player is already signed up to your rivals, and what's that saying about you as a club if you can't keep hold of her, or even like losing Payol is bad, but at least it's like to Barcelona and not your direct league rivals. And to lose both players of such significance to your squad in one summer is crazy. So I think for the kind of future of the club, it does feel very strange at the moment, and particularly even just having rumours about your manager. I mean, we saw what it did to Chelsea last season in looking at the WSL, and obviously they still went on to win the WSL, but they dropped out of that quadruple race. They clearly had their wobbles, and it was the brilliance of an 8-0 win that kind of did that for them, rather than the normal dominance that we see from that Chelsea side. So it does seem like a bit tumultuous, shall we say, at Wolfsburg at the moment, and it doesn't feel like they're getting any closer to a Bayern Munich team that is just getting stronger and stronger. I was reading some articles by Sophie Lawton at ESPN prior to this to kind of do my prep, shall we say, and she was suggesting that the main place that Wolfsburg perhaps need to strengthen is kind of in the forward department in terms of replacing the goals that they get from Payol. But that being said, there is that interesting element that you kind of spoke about in terms of aging, like an aging team. And I think you can probably hang on for a season maybe with that experience. But the recruitment needs to start now to kind of start embedding and rotating those younger players in so that the transition doesn't get as bad in the future. And as a team, you can kind of tell who's healthy when they're looking more to the future. And if they don't do that, then it's probably a symbol that they're not actually in a healthy position going forward.
No, I tend to agree. I think all eyes on Wolfsburg. I quickly wanted to. I was going to save this to the end in terms of a couple of quick fire ones, but while we're on Wolfsburg, obviously Jansen's a player that has already moved and has joined Manchester United, which has pleased United fans. And she's done an interview today where she's talking about being out of the Champions League for one season, but she doesn't want to be out of it for any more than one, which is interesting. That's taking the ambition straight to United from the off, saying, all right, no Champions League next year, but we've better be in it the year after. Is essentially what she's saying. So big calls already. She's not even done a training session yet. United, she's already talking about that. But is anyone surprised at that transfer? Just out of interest, while we're talking about a Wolfsburg departure, because I can't lie to you, this really surprised me as talking at it from a United point of view. But she also what I noticed in her interview today, she was talking about how she knew this since January, which I find really interesting. If this has been known for a long time. I'm pretty sure she scored against Bayern in the cup final as well to win Wolfsburg the cup. So it clearly didn't play on her mind too much. Did she score in it or did she score in the league? I can't remember. I'm going to go and fact check that while Liberty's answering because I think she wants to jump in. I can see you holding your mouse over on mute, ready to go. Yeah, were you surprised on that one?
I can't remember who. I knew it was your brand scored the first goal. I can't remember who scored the second one. It might have been Jansen. You posed it as a question of, are you surprised she left? No. She had a pretty okay season. Her stats are quite good, so it wasn't like she was like having shockers. But I do think that Wolfsburg are going through a youth movement, and I think she was one of the, if not, Pop's the oldest, one of the oldest. So it did feel like natural. I was more surprised that she went to United purely because I didn't think that United were going to sign a centre back. She's a versatile centre back. She can play on the wing, on a fullback. Thank you. But it was more of a surprise from a United perspective for me, purely because I feel like they last season had the centre backs quite secure and working quite well together in certain places. The Arsenal game at the Emirates, Millie Turner basically just hung on to Steen Blackstenius for 90 minutes and was not penalised for it. Anyway, but yeah, I think... But I do think that Wolfsburg are going through a youth recruitment. I think they've now signed in back-to-back summers 2 ex-Barcelona kids. And when we think about older ages being swapped for kids, Nuria Rambako, I want to say it's pronounced, please. I've not looked. Quite naturally came in when Fidestash Rausch left for the NWSL. She's not that old. Rausch is 27, 28, so she's not as old as kind of Jansen, but it did feel like a kind of significant time for this kid that's she just signed from the biggest club in the world to kind of immediately fall in. And I think that's probably what we're going to see with Jansen and probably across the board. Their signing of Lineth did surprise me though, because that felt like a time to get a youthful striker, and I don't know her age, but I'm under the impression she's not as youthful as the other signings they've made in the 2 Barcelona kids.
I'm just double checking for you. 27, 28 in October. So yeah, not on the full youth exuberant side on that one. There's a question for you, Mia, that I'll come to, and then I want to come back to Laura on a separate question. Just very quickly on the Jansen thing, obviously talking about who she's going to potentially replace. My understanding is at the moment, I think Turner goes to the backup centre back and Jansen becomes the left centre back alongside Letitia. I think is what is going to happen from next season. Because as far as I'm aware, United will go and sign another left back, and she's spoken in her interview today about being a defender. She's not played defensive midfield since she left Arsenal, so I don't see her picking up that role again. So the only other position is left centre back. She's not coming to sit on the bench. So for me, she starts alongside Letitia, and another fullback next to her, so Blundell drops to be in the backup, I think is what's potentially going to happen there. But we'll see. Who knows? I don't know everything. We'll come back to that on the United channel when we get close to the season, when we're actually in pre-season, see some of those. Mia, there was a question for you that Joe put in a bit earlier on. Curious to see what Mia thinks of a team like Fiorentina in the Champions League path qualifying and room to be signing. Redgar, there we go.
Yeah, it's really cool. It is really, really cool. And the big thing for me about Fiorentina is that they've got some really solid, sort of more experienced players. There's quite a mixture of like experience and youth. There's not sort of like that middle ground. It's one or the other. But they are rumoured to sign somebody called Agnese Bonfantini, who I am really obsessed with because I can't believe that she hasn't been picked up by another European club. She's been passed around Syria like nobody's business. She's 25, and I like to describe her as a taller Chloe Kelly. Very clinical, scored against the Netherlands on international duty. And she's technically a Juve player. That's one of the 8 wingers that we spoke about earlier. So she's likely to leave. And really good business from Fiorentina. Another club that is passionate about their women's team. And you can tell from the sort of season that they had last year. And yeah, I really hope that they do well. They've got a tough first game in Brøndby, but you know, we'll just have to see. I'm hoping that a couple more of the Italian teams pull some stuff out of the bag, because it can't just be Roma. Although I'm happy Roma keep doing your thing, but bring the others in.
There we go. One to keep an eye on. Maybe we'll do a separate kind of Italian show on that to dive in a little bit more from a Fiorentina point of view. And other teams about AC Milan, we've only just briefly touched on AC Milan and so on. There's a few good players obviously moving over to those types of teams as well now. Which I've got kind of a player and a league to cover. We've not really spoken about Spain, have we, really? I do want to quickly talk about that, because Barca obviously now being the complete dominant side in Spain and across Europe, to be fair. Obviously, they've won the Champions League. They are, for me, well, they are the best team in Europe right now. Laura, how do the Madrid sides kind of overcome that gap to Barcelona? Because it does feel inevitable that Barcelona, I think most people that watch that league are just like, by Christmas, Barca have pretty much got it wrapped up for the most part, and you can kind of see them running away with it again next season. How do Madrid bridge that gap to them? Because I imagine it's hard to sell the project to players that know you're probably not going to win the league while Barca are there, but you've got to start somewhere. You know, these Madrid have got to try and convince the players of going, no, we want to beat them. How do you think they do that, and what kind of players do you think they need to try and get over that line?
I think it's a really, really tough one, because you look at the whole of Europe and everyone's going, how do we beat Barcelona? And then you look at their league, who haven't had the same time and investment in that kind of, like, you're looking at your Chelseas, you're looking at your Lyons, and they're asking questions as well-established teams in women's football as to how to beat Barcelona. And then you've got your Real Madrids and your Atletico Madrids, who are facing them kind of like every season in the league, in the domestic setting and in cup settings. So in some ways they have almost the best chance, because they have this chance to face them. Like when Chelsea or Lyon play them, it's in the high-pressured games where you have to get it right on that one occasion, right? But in the league, you can kind of, I guess, experiment and work out your tactics a little bit better of, okay, we've seen this, we're following this game, we're watching this league week in, week out through our analysis. What is it that you can overcome Barcelona? And maybe that's nothing right now with the players that they have. But I think in some ways they have the best opportunity to do so in the kind of arena that they're playing in. That being said, like, it's like, where do you start? How to beat Barcelona could be a whole book, because it seems impossible. But I think Real Madrid have got some quality players in their squad now, and while you can't look at Caroline Weir and go, oh, when you come back from your ACL, we need you to be this amazing player again and be enough to beat Barcelona and kind of combine with other players to do that, because that's too much pressure on a player that's just returned from injury. But there's some things that they can do, and I guess you talk about selling the projects, you've got to look to the youth and to kind of train them up and say, okay, yeah, we're not number one right now, but with investment, with this, with that, and maybe the kind of driving force that they need to plan a project, if they're really serious about it and really serious about overcoming Barcelona, is actually going to be the biggest spur to overcoming Barcelona long term, because they have to have that in place. They have to start creating those plans now to convince those players to join and actually take it really, really seriously, that other clubs don't necessarily have that impetus because it seems more achievable to do that. So long term, maybe that's more exciting for them, but short term, it does seem very, very tough as a challenge.
No, for sure. I mean, this comment's talking about, they can match Barca financially. It's a case if they want to, and mentioning that, this comment talking about they brought in some pretty good players. Obviously, Redondo and Navarra being two players I would highlight as being very good pickups, obviously within the Spanish league, moving from the teams that they did to Real Madrid. But Liberty, can you see them overtaking Barca next season with the signs they've made? Obviously, Barca have signed Pyle, which obviously is quite a statement. There is a possibility that Kira Walsh doesn't remain at Barcelona this summer. There is also that, if that move takes place. You got your thumb. You're just nodding along and putting your thumb up. I'm assuming that's just a big yes.
I was I'm a Pyle super fan. Not next season, they're not going to overtake them at all. You've gone from having the best team in the world, and then you've gone, and we'll just add the best striker as well. Why not? It's fine. Casual. Wolfsburg had a pretty unlike them season, and she still won the Golden Boot. And she was playing out of position. Like, this is the type of player they've signed. They've signed I have 3 favorite strikers in the game, and 2 of them play at Barcelona. The other one obviously plays in Sweden. I don't think they'll overtake them. And the thing I think about with this is I was very lucky. I went to El Clasico in April in Madrid. It was a lovely day. Recommend. And it was in Madrid. And there was an energy of, we're still not going to beat them. And in fact, when Alexia got subbed on, everyone cheered. And I don't know if that's a Spanish thing, because they're just like, that's our national team player. But if, I don't know, I don't think if Leah Williamson got subbed on against Spurs, that Spurs fans are cheering. I think there's a feeling in Madrid that it's not going to be now that they overtake them. They can push them, but it's not going to be now. It's not going to be next season. Probably not going to be the season after. But there will get to a point, as Laura's kind of saying, that it will happen, but it's not soon. I think maybe next 5 years, next 10 years. But they have to keep pushing them first. They have to get to a point where they're going toe-to-toe to the end of the season. And I mean, I think Barca won the league with about 3 games left. You have to get to a point where it's coming down to the last game of the season, and then we'll say, okay, Real Madrid are here and they mean business in this league. But until then, it's not going to happen.
No, I agree. I think it's interesting. I don't think they're a million miles away, but it's just tough when Barca are so relentless, and you know that they're probably not going to drop any points anywhere. So there's that pressure on that game that you have to beat them, because they're probably not going to drop points anywhere else. This made me laugh. Kira Walsh on the side of the Mecha Bingo and Rochdale might send her back. That would be quite something if she came back and that was in her interview. That was the reason for it. I mentioned that, and I don't want to start a rumor here. I'm not so convinced that she's leaving, by the way. That was just me pointing out that it has been reported that she may well do. And from what I understand, it's very much what Tim's understanding and Emma's, and then anyone else who's tweeted about this, that it was very much a case of she's not for sale. Now all of a sudden Barca are like, okay, give us the money and you can have her. So it really depends if Arsenal are going to put up whatever price Barca have put on her back. But interesting to keep an eye on. I think we'll see on that one. Sean, I see your question for Liberty. I'll come back to that. That'll be the kind of final question. But my last player I wanted to mention, because I can't lie to you, I feel like this was a really big one. Fran Kirby. We finally got an answer to where she is heading. Brighton and Hove Albion. What do we think on this one? Because I can't lie. I had a list of teams that... I love how you just smile and nod. We could all do that. The show would be about 5 minutes long if we all answered like that. I reckon we do that. Just do a shorter show like that next time. But this was a sign. I think we all had an idea. I can't remember whether we spoke about this when she left Chelsea or not on this channel in terms of where we thought she might go. I thought there was a potential that she goes over into Scandinavia with obviously Marin as well. Laura, come to you first. This is a good signing for Brighton. I think everyone. I will say from the offer, the way they announced it, I thought was brilliant. By the way, with Kirby, for those of you who don't know the game over in the UK, throwing the ball onto the side of the. I thought it was a brilliant way. It's just starts off to the marketing team there. But is this a good pickup? Do you think, from a Brighton point of view?
I'll come back to it because I can't quite remember the full thing, but I have a point to make about missed opportunities with signing announcements. Yeah, I've got it, but I'll come back to that. Yeah, in terms of the signing for, sorry, you can just hear my inner thought process there. In terms of the signing Brighton, but I think it's super exciting for women's football because we've seen a huge name in women's football go to like a team that's not traditionally kind of one of the top teams that you might expect to make that kind of a signing in the WSL. And I think it's exciting because we see that like there's a growing competition right around the mid-table in the WSL that are coming to push for that fourth spot, that third spot. And the more and more teams that we can get kind of around that area, even if they're not breaking into the third and fourth or the 1, 2, 3, the more influence they're going to have on that 1, 2, 3, which means that the more that 1, 2, 3 is going to be mixed up, even if it is that same kind of top 3 teams, because you're getting greater talent, you're getting greater experience, you're getting different levels down the table, which pushes those teams to do better in the game, because now they're playing Brighton and they're coming up against Fran Kirby. And I think it's been mentioned by Joe, they've also signed Kiko Seika, which is another great signing. And I think what's most interesting about Brighton now is like, who do they bring in as manager? And I don't know if there's been any rumours about that, but I think that could be a key. Like, do they get in a player that can utilise these players in the best way, and then a manager, and then if they do, you're looking at another challenger, another like Liverpool type team that can come on and really make a statement in the league, because they've got that experience and they've got a really exciting player. And if Kirby hits form and really settles in that team, it could be a really, really exciting season for Brighton. And I think the impact that can have, not necessarily just on Brighton's position, but on if you've got increasing competitiveness in leagues, and we want to see this across Europe, you're going to have, like, if we're talking about Lyon and PSG, for example, if you've got more competition further down, you've got more chances that Lyon might lose to another team, and then PSG have an opportunity to come in. And that greater competition in the mid-table, while they might not get to the top of the table, it influences the top of the table, and that's just super exciting overall. My one little signing announcement miss was the Sandy Baltimore. Why did they not use Hairspray Good Morning Baltimore? Because that would have been class.
We need to get you in the marketing department, I think, Laura.
I know Maisie. I don't know if anyone follows Maisie, a Chelsea fan, journalist. It's her birthday today. I don't know if she's watching. She's probably got better things to be doing. But happy birthday! She made that joke. She said she works as a nurse. Well, she's a student, but she does night shifts at a hospital. She woke up and she said, "Oh, she's something along the lines of," she tweeted it like, "Oh, just woken up. Good morning, Baltimore," or something like that. And I thought, she's done it. She's done it. That's a good one.
Disclaimer that I didn't copy that. I hadn't seen that before. That was all original for me as well.
No, all these opportunities, you see. it's like I don't know why it's just reminded me. It's like when Jess Simpson went to Bristol on loan from United last season, and Bristol City used the whole Simpsons thing to announce her as a sign. I thought that was a pretty good way of doing it. Marketing teams are geniuses sometimes when they come up with ideas like this. Liberty, what's your thoughts on this one? You were obviously nodding along when I asked the question. As I said, I think personally this is a really good sign. The fact that Fran's staying in the league, we know obviously she's had health issues and various things over the last kind of couple of years. But if she can get anywhere back to her best, I mean, Brighton have got one hell of a player there.
Definitely. I think we were all pretty impressed with Brighton's recruitment last summer, and pushing them to go into that top kind of 5 space. The thing they missed was somebody who's a serial winner, I think. Who's more of a serial winner than Fran Kirby? I mean, she's won countless trophies at Chelsea. She's won a Euros with England. She knows what it feels like to win, and even if she doesn't know what even in places where she hasn't won, she's almost certainly come second, which isn't the same, but there is still that being in that final place, having that pressure on you kind of thing. And I think she's a sensational talent. And yeah, as you said, if she can get back to where she was and can be, and I think she can because she's 30, but she's not stupid old, as in like 35 and above, then she can do it, and she can have that mentality of what we're talking about with Bronze going to Chelsea, having won the Champions League. She's adding that kind of, I've been there and done that, you haven't. But I did see, sorry, I'm going back to that, because there was this whole thing that Bronze has won the Champions League 5 times, blah, 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 and how she's going to bring that to Chelsea. I'm waving this pen around. And somebody very, very correctly pointed out that Khadijah Buchanan has done the same. And I want to applaud that person, because 9 times out of 10, non-Lionesses who do the same thing as Lionesses don't get the praise they deserve. But Khadijah Buchanan won 5 Champions Leagues before she moved to Chelsea, obviously, because they haven't won it. So I just want to say that. But yeah, but Kirby's bringing that to Brighton, and having that kind of player and that talent is going to do them wonders. And if they can sort out the manager and how they want to play football, then I think they're going to do really, really well.
If Miriam's still watching this, she's going to love that you shouted out a Canadian there when winning Champions League. So Miriam, if you're still watching, I know you're going to absolutely love that. That's been referenced. Right, Mia, bring us home on the transfer chat then, in terms of Fran Kirby, Brighton. What you expected? Happy for them? Good signing? What's your overall thoughts on this one?
Well, okay. West Ham hat on. I'm really annoyed that they've signed Fran Kirby, because that drives a bigger wedge between the two. And I thought it was going to be West Ham and Brighton challenger for relegation this season. So that's really annoying. I think on a neutral level, I think it's a brilliant signing. I think, she does bring that experience, and it is absolutely now all on her to keep fit and healthy and just, yeah. No, Sean, I knew he was coming. I can't argue with him like this. Yeah, I'm not best pleased with a West Ham hat on, but it's brilliant from Brighton. They still have a fair amount to do. Don't get me wrong. Like they can't just sign Frank. Oh, dishwasher, it's a luxury. Yeah, I'm gonna go. That's ruined my point.
Do you know what I thought it was? It reminds me, on TV shows and things like that, you have like an auto cue thing that like stops people from speaking every so often. There's like a red light that flashes in the distance. Well, obviously when they're on stage talking, it's almost as soon as you start, it's like stop. You made a good point there, Mia. We enjoy.
I don't think I made a point. I don't think I made 1 point, but did I bring it home? Are we done?
What I got from that is West Ham are probably going to go down.
My point was, yeah, West Ham are now relegated. So thank you, Brighton. Yeah, it's probably deserved.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think this definitely makes Brighton. I think Brighton have made a couple of really good signs already, and if Franco can get any, said this a number of times. For me, Franco is one of the best midfielders that the league has ever seen. If she can get back to that kind of level, I don't think she will get back to that level, but if she can get to like 80, 90% of that, yeah, phenomenal. Not at the moment. I think probably America, I would have thought, if you had to put some kind of bet down, I would imagine she's going over there. There's a bit further up. There's a few ones here. It is a dream team, Reese, and I know I always like to have kind of a dream panel on here, but that's no disrespect to the three, I guess, original Wofos that we are missing currently tonight in Barry. Apologies, Mia. Mia's just getting.
Actually, sorry, I
torn
thought
apart
we were
from
joking
Vivianne.
about the fact I wasn't coming back. I thought that was a joke. I didn't realise he was taking that seriously. This has been so much fun. I think I say this every show that I'm not invited back. Every show.
You don't have to put your hand up, Liberty. You can just go straight in. Just to
I
meet
don't want to
yourself, go for it.
interrupt. I just want to answer the Hammerby question.
Oh no, I was coming to you on this one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Sean, you've now ruined it because I had my finger up, and now Sean's commented, "What's up, brother?" Oh, he keeps going. My thoughts, Hammerby. Sorry, I've got excited now. I wasn't expecting a Hammerby section. I also really like the signing, and I think she'll take them to a different level in Europe potentially. I regrettably don't know that much because she's come straight out of Japan, and information is lacking severely. But I mean, she made her debut at the weekend. She scored already, and she seems, from what I think, a very Micah Hermano player, which excites me greatly. Micah was sensational for us, and I think this is a really good signing. Our chances in the Champions League, I think we could push for group stages. I'm going to be really honest. I don't see why not, especially if we can get Vlato back to her best. I know she had strapping on her knee quite severely quite recently, for quite a while, I think about a month to 6 weeks, but she seems to be back. She scored at the weekend. Absolute stunner. I sent it to Laura, and she was impressed. And I mean, Vilda Halsund has been absolutely tearing it up. Thea Sorbo also, and the other striker I mentioned earlier, Ellen Vangerheim, is coming back. So I think we could go far. I think we are unfortunate to be in third in the table. I mean, Rosengard are completely tearing up the league at the moment. So I'm not saying we should be first again, but I think we're unfortunate to be third instead of second. But I think some recruitment in this, so we're now in a summer period break that happens every season, not just for the Olympics. But I think some recruitment now. There's been rumours of another Japanese player coming to us, which is quite exciting, because the Japanese style seems to suit us quite well, and we seem to help them as well. And I think, yeah, we've now gone 5, and we're now in a break, so this kind of is slightly reductive, but we've now gone 5 games with a clean sheet, and we've only conceded 7, I want to say, on the top of my head. But we've sort of got the back line down. We've got Smilla Holmberg on the wing. Note that name down. 17, Swedish international. I'm pointing again because I'm deeply passionate. Write that name down, because one day you'll be thankful that I said this, because she's the next best fullback. The next best... Oh no, Lucy Bronze. There we go. She's absolutely tearing it up. And yeah, I mean, your Blackstad came from City to us and has been doing really well as well. I think we get to groups, we could push for more. We could be one of the surprise underdogs, like we had this season. Joe, yes, but also last season Rosengard were a completely different team to this season Rosengard. Like crazy different, as in they finished, I think, 7th off the top of my head last season, and now are undefeated so far in the first half of the season. So it does feel mad, but you have to think they're completely, it's almost a different team. But I think, yeah, they will not have Champions League football, which I think is a big thing because Häcken and Hammarby will. So they're going to win the league. But I think, yeah, we could push for group stages and maybe beyond. I'm not saying no. Depends on who we hold on to, because Hammarby have a lot of young talent, and a lot of good young talent. I mean, I've mentioned Ellen, I've mentioned Holmberg, Flatto, these kind of players that could potentially be leaving sooner than I'd like. But we also have players like Simone Boy coming back from pregnancy. She's just had her baby a week ago, 5 days ago or something. So I think, yeah, I've rambled on way too long. But I think, yeah, sum up, we could make group stages, we could push further, we could be the surprise package. And if we are, I said it here first.
There we go. No, I enjoyed that, and keep your eyes peeled because we said we would do a show on the Damallsvenskan as well. And now Phil O'Connor is back from the Euros. He's been covering obviously the men's Euros out in Germany. He is back, and I want the three of us, obviously Liberty, Phil, and myself, to do a full show on that league because I want to dive into. There's a lot of specifics and a lot of things going on over there as well. So yeah, there we go. We got the nod of approval of the thumbs up as well to go through. So that is a show that we're we are doing in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes out for that if that's something you want to hear more of. Right, we'll wrap it up there because I said we would go for an hour and a half. I do it every bloody time. It's past 10 o'clock, I can say that. But every time I'm like, right, we'll go for an hour. There we go, 90 minutes later. I'm amazed I've made it through, to be fair, because my head is absolutely killing now. So I'm going to get off and go to sleep in a second. Myself and Laura are potentially back on Thursday. So keep your eyes out for that with Nancy Gillen. Obviously, if you haven't seen, she has released a book that she's written in the last kind of couple of days. I think it came out over the weekend. So we're going to be doing a show on Thursday talking a bit more about that. So that's definitely what you want to tune in for. And then next Monday, we'll be back again for another different type of show. I don't know who's hosting. We've kind of messed around with our kind of rota in the last few weeks because we've all kind of been here, there, and everywhere. So we'll find out who's in hosted chair next week, and we'll obviously tweet that out when we do. Thanks for the three of you for joining me on this Monday evening. Is there anything you want to shout out, Laura? Obviously your TikTok and everything now, because people need to be following that for your running and things like that you're doing.
Yeah, just get following my TikTok if you want to see some runs in the shape of players' names. I think it's at Football Laura, but maybe known. It's just me like being sweaty and running. So it's an acquired taste.
You've sold it brilliantly there, Lauren. I think your followers are going to go 10 times up now. Mia, if people want to find out obviously more about Italy as well, you tweet a lot about what's going on over there. It's where I get pretty much all of my Italian stuff from. It's your Twitter account at the moment. So what's that? Well, it's right there, isn't it? It's
right there.
It's currently
it's right there. That's all.
So there we go. And Liberty, anything for yourself?
I'm going to Lyon. If anyone wants Lyon content, my usernames are just my name. I'm going to Lyon for the Olympic semi-final, if anyone fancies it. And also, I want to say, we don't have beef. I just like getting on Mia's nerves. And also, thank you, TJ. That was very nice comment for you to say. I rambled for too long. Way too long. But thank you. I appreciated that. And yeah, no beef. Just fun.
There we go. It's all fun and games. You should see some of the things that we say to each other when we're not on camera. It's all love, trust me. As I said, we'll potentially be back on Thursday as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Make sure you're liking the video, subscribing, following all the socials. It's all in the description and things like that where you can find everybody. Have a good rest of your evenings. There's not much left of it now if you've been watching this for the last hour and a half. Have a good rest of the week. That's probably a better way of ending it. We should see you guys in the next one.